Hey, John Gilroy here. Last June, I was at the AWS public sector event in downtown Washington with 26,000 of my closest friends. Why would so many people show up? Today, we're going to bring in Andrew Christian, and he's going to reveal the magic sauce behind success at AWS. Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. In the virtual studio is Andrew Christian, Senior Sales Manager, National Security at the aforementioned AWS. Didn't see you down there. Of course, you got lost in the crowd at the show, didn't you, Andrew?
It was a big conference this year. So it is hard to find each other unless we make a plan, John. So next year, I definitely make that plan.
So let me state the obvious. I'm an old guy, you're a young guy, and I've seen a lot of stuff come and go. I remember years ago, there was no AWS in the federal government. There was nothing, no one even dreamt of it. It was you buy a book at Amazon, and all of a sudden it crept up, and then all of a sudden it's like it's flooded the market. And I thought maybe you'd come in and you could, what's the phrase that Ricky Ricardo have? You got some explaining to do. You got some explaining to do in regards to success. We have 4 or 5 different mountaintops to talk about, but I think a key word that everyone wants to talk about is innovation. I think if I look at my last 20 guests, do a word cloud on that, innovation will probably pop up there somewhere. So innovation, is this part baked into Amazon, or tell me about the innovation framework you guys use?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I think, as you pointed out, Amazon has really made a lot of headway very quickly within the IT space, and our culture of innovation has really enabled that. I know even when we started with our government customers not that long ago, like talking about Amazon, we're like, you mean, don't you guys sell books? Like, what can you do to help me out here? And so what we've been able to do to support them with their IT infrastructure needs just in the past few years has been pretty incredible. But the Amazon as a company, we're pretty proud of saying that we're peculiar, right? We've got some very specific Amazon terms and jargon that we use in our daily conversation, but it really goes to show just how the company is special and views things differently than other companies. And I think that kind of gets after that special sauce. We kind of think about those in 4 different pillars or areas with the Amazon culture, mechanisms, architecture, and organization. So when we think about the culture, we like to say that it's always day one. So you may have heard Jeff Bezos or Andy Jassy use that terminology. And as a company, we like to check ourselves, is our behavior, is our mentality that of a company that is thinking day one, that we're scrappy, that we're thinking of new ideas, not getting locked into, well, this is the way that we've always done it. And part of that culture are things like our leadership principles, like working backwards to pizza teams, lots of other jargon that you and I can dig into in the next couple of minutes. And then as we think about things like mechanisms, it's like we have this thing called PRFAQs, which is a press release, frequently asked questions document that we walk through as part of that. Our architecture of microservices, and then organizations just like small teams that are able to execute quickly. So there's lots of different elements that go into that culture of innovation, but those are some of the different ways that we like to think about it.
I was sitting in an airport in Brussels 2 weeks ago, and look on the Institute books. One of the books was The Innovator's Dilemma. They're still selling it, Christensen hit a home run with that. And what he would say is that, hey, Amazon's too stinking big to have innovation. You got to split it off into more scrappy, smaller companies. And so how can a company that big still retain that aggression and flexibility?
Yeah, and I think you pointed out that when you are in a large organization, sometimes that can be a challenge. So one of the things that we do here is we have this structural concept of 2 pizza teams. And a 2 pizza team is a team of around 6 to 10 people, a team that's large enough to be fed by 2 pizzas. And from the beginning, Jeff Bezos, that was one of his principles, that once a team gets beyond the size where they can be fed by 2 teams, that team is probably too large, because we want teams to be able to be the size where you have enough people that you can accomplish meaningful work, but not so large that communication becomes a challenge as you start to scale that out. So of course, Amazon's a pretty big company, but it's a very large company made up of these small autonomous teams. And part of the two pizza team concept is you have a single threaded leader who is ultimately responsible and can make the decision for that team. And then giving that team full ownership of whatever thing it is that they're responsible for so that it can really move out. And that kind of decentralized approach allows us to move more quickly as a company rather than having to get permission for every thing that you're asking for.
Andrew, I know you went to Naval Academy, so you're probably involved in fitness. You might have heard about the guy on YouTube called the knees over toes guy. I don't know if you know him, but he talks about increasing durability for your knees with specific exercises. He recommends walking backwards as one of these techniques. But when it comes to Amazon, they talk about walking backwards. It's working backwards. So what do you mean by working backwards?
Yeah, so working backwards is a process that we've adopted to make sure that we're maintaining our focus on customers. So a very Amazon approach is just a centrality of our customers and what they want, what they need. One of our leadership principles is customer obsession, and working backwards helps us make sure that we're placing the focus on what customers' problems are, what their wants are, and then working backwards from that to accomplish it. So rather than creating products that we're showing up to customers and saying, hey, look, we built this great widget, or we have this thing, like, I think you should use it, instead of trying to solve the problems for them. I think I mentioned earlier our press release frequently asked questions process, and that's something that guides us in that working backwards, through working backwards. So the concept there is that prior to building a feature, building a service or a product, that we've got the end in mind. So like, what would it look like to solve this customer problem? And then somebody from that team or the team together will write a press release as if that feature is launched or that product is launched, and all the great things that we would have in that press release as if it already occurred. And then after that, would have frequently asked questions, or questions both external, like that a user might ask, and also internal to like, well, how does this thing work? Like, why did we choose this? What did we do there? And then that PRFAQ document really helps align around, is this a product or feature that we should build? And did we ask the right questions prior to going out and building? And that helps us maintain the vision for what it is that we're trying to solve, but then also trying to answer some of the questions so that we can get around some of the obstacles that might befall us if we're just focused on like a technology solution rather than really an outcome for customers.
Yeah, I've heard that method of the press release ahead of time. That's great. Over the holidays here, I picked up Anthony Everett's book on Hadrian, because I'm interested in leaders and leadership. And you went to the Naval Academy, so you've been imbued with leadership principles as well. So we're getting bombarded by the guy who followed twice after Hadrian, Marcus Aurelius, and the leadership principles and your leadership principles. But Amazon has a distinctive set of principles as well. So how do you pick and choose which ones work? I mean, you've seen a lot of different, I'm sure you've read about Hadrian and Marcus Aurelius. So what about leadership principles in Amazon?
Yeah, and leadership principles at Amazon we actually have a list of 16 leadership principles that as a company, we've made the decision, our leadership has made a decision that these are important concepts and mental models that can help us guide our decision-making, our interactions, our team building. And even though that sounds like a lot, like how do you use 16 leadership principles? I think the right way to think about that is how you can leverage them in different situations. And it's a common terminology and lexicon that we can use as we're trying to align around different ideas and decisions that we're making. And so some of these are things like, I'll give an example of a few, like customer obsession, I mentioned earlier. That might be one that might lead us to a decision because we're really focused on a customer outcome. Bias for action is one, like moving quickly and how that's important for business. But sometimes they're in tension with each other. They might seem to be opposed. Like dive deep is a leadership principle as well. So, sometimes bias for action and dive deep might have a natural tension there. Because if you're trying to move quickly, but you need to get more information, like you can't do both at the same time. So I think it's having the discernment to know, like, we as a team are choosing to move quickly here, even though we don't have all the answers, or wait, I think we need to dive deeper into this problem before we move forward. And so even though there's tension there, and it seems like, how do teams actually use these to drive their decisions, it does force conversations for us to be very intentional around why we're doing what we're doing, and us to have a common language around how we're acting and behaving and making those decisions.
Many of my customers work for the DoD or three-letter agencies. And sometimes they make decisions that have life and death consequences. And so if you are forced into accelerating the decision process, you have to differentiate between, I would guess, life and death decisions and things that can be reversible. I think you guys did one-way or two-way doors. Is that what you guys classify that as?
Yeah, that's a great call, John. That's exactly the terminology that we use. And so a lot of that, and this is again going back to the early days of Amazon, where Jeff Bezos called out very clearly, hey, most decisions can and should be made by individuals with high judgment. These decisions are reversible, right? And we call those two-way door decisions. So, you might make a decision, you can quickly back that out if it was the wrong decision, but don't spend time over analyzing it. Like, make the best decision that you have based on the information that you have and move forward, rather than, hey, let's get another meeting or series of meetings or a committee together to make a decision on something that's not that consequential that we can back out. In contrast, there are decisions that really do impact the business long term or have like serious implications, and those are what we call one-way door decisions, where now you've made a decision that you're committing something to a customer, or you've made some design or architectural decision that's not so easy to unwind, and those take more thought, and potentially more approval based on like being deliberate about that. And so as a team in general, like, we want to empower each individual to make those two-way door decisions to the maximum extent possible, so we can move as quickly as we need to as a business. Kind of going back to what we talked to at the beginning, like, how can Amazon move quickly and innovate? And it's really empowering people to make those decisions that, if we need to unwind that, we can.
Andrew, 10, 12 years ago, you were studying mechanical engineering over in Annapolis there. And there's a concept that's popular in software developers, and the concept is embracing failure. Now, back when you were taking strength of materials, I'm sure you didn't want to embrace failure in any of those classes, did you? So how does embracing failure differ from, learning advanced math at the military academy versus software and different types of projects and initiatives?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I know most of our customers would say, hey, we don't have any tolerance for failure.
Right. Of course you're going to say
can't
that.
Fail. The products and services that you're offering can't fail. And that's absolutely true. And, I think resiliency and building resilient architectures is very important to us, because we know that availability is important to our customers. I kind of put that in a separate category from like the type of failure that we're talking about here. And this is really more about taking risks to try to innovate and experiment. So one of the things Jeff Bezos has said is, failure and invention are inseparable twins. You can't, if you already know the outcome of an experiment, and then it's not really an experiment, and you can't really innovate unless you're willing to experiment. If your team is constant, another concept here at Amazon is, if you have constant success, then you probably have a lack of ambition, because you're not trying things that are hard enough or thinking big enough. And sometimes those, what may be perceived as a failure for something that you're trying to do, will end up being successful in the end in a different way that you didn't know. So some of the more famous ones there, the Amazon Fire Phone, which a lot of the engineering that went into that eventually became the Amazon Echo and Alexa systems. Another would be Amazon Auctions, that kind of famously failed, but eventually ended up morphing into Marketplace, which has been hugely successful and important things that customers have been able to utilize. So when you do fail, or you do fall short, then you also want to have a mechanism for going back and reviewing that. And here we call that a correction of error, where you're trying to learn systematically and not place the blame on any like person or thing. It's not about saying, hey, this person made a mistake. It's more saying, well, how did we get in this place where this error was made, and how can we correct that? You referenced my Navy time a few times, and to me, that's very much something that we did in the submarine world that we used to call critiques, where after an issue, we'd get in a room, we'd all determine, okay, like let's ask why, however many times we need to back out what the root cause of this is, so that we can solve that. And it's the same thing that we do here at Amazon.
Well, we talked about a lot of principles today. We talked about Roman emperors. We talked about Jeff Bezos. And that's all well and good, but my listeners in the federal government, they're over at labor, they're over at transportation. I mean, pick an agency. So how can federal agencies apply these principles?
Yeah, I think what's cool about a lot of these like principles and these culture of innovation topics is that they're not unique to Amazon, in that anybody anywhere can adopt these types of principles where it makes sense. And we would encourage our federal customers to be looking at the way they do things and thinking about, hey, are there ways that we can think about the service that we're trying to deliver, the mission that we're trying to work on, and work backwards from that? Like we've even encouraged customers, and we've seen them do their own PRFAQ documents for things that they've been delivering for their customers. We've even, because of these topics have been interesting, we've hosted culture of innovation sessions and workshops to help talk through which of these things make sense. How might you be able to adopt this? Like, is there an opportunity maybe to apply this two pizza team concept to different federal organizations in a way that can help them move more quickly? So yes, of course, there's different regulations and kind of like bureaucracy that sometimes customers have to deal with that maybe isn't the same on our side, but there's so many things that can be adopted in how teams are making decisions, making more quick decisions more quickly, maybe through 1 and 2-way door decisions, things like that are still applicable.
What I see happening is that I don't think federal organizations are going to have much choice. There's so much innovation going. The malicious actors are using AI and changing the rules of the game so fast. It's not a matter of putting together a piece of paper and distributing a memo. No, it's like just what you said. So something happened. There was an incident, and almost with the submarine analogy is, okay, what did we do wrong? What did we do right? How can we compare this? Because they're getting forced into this agile, flexible, because they don't have a choice. The world's it's speeding by them. I mean, the amount of change in the federal government, just whoa, it's just so much faster it's been in the last 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to the extent that we can help customers with moving more quickly, we really want to align around what their mission is and the ways that we can do that, either from a technology perspective or just as partners in the best way that we can. And if we can't solve the problem, then introducing them to other partners that might be able to assist as well.
I was at the gym the other day. People are listening to podcasts in the squat rack, and some are walking dogs. And so if people are listening to this and they can't write down anything, I think do you have a leadership PDF? There's a leadership guide you have available. What's that called?
Yeah, absolutely. There's several links to different pages where we offer more information on the leadership principles, a lot of different concepts that we spoke about today. So happy to share that and include that in whatever notes exist on the podcast.
So what I'll do, Andrew, I'll put that in the show notes page for this episode. This is episode 297 of federaltechpodcast.com, and you can go there and download that leadership guide. And I think that's going to be the challenge. I think AI is making a big impact, but more importantly is that how you can handle a fast-moving crisis situation. It's almost like it's a daily fast-moving crisis situation. It's like you can't be stuck in your ways. You flat-footed and you're going to lose, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I appreciate a lot of the challenges that our customers have to deal with. I think the everyday only becomes more and more challenging. And so, to the extent that we can help, we'd love to do that. But definitely appreciate everything that the folks across the federal government, our customers, are doing for us in all the different ways, both from a services and mission perspective.
Well, here it's January 2026. I'll make a prediction that in June I'll be down at the AWS public sector event and interviewing people and maybe talking to you and finding out. Try to put an agenda together for 6 months from now. I don't think you can. Maybe that's your job, Andrew. It'll really make you suicidal trying to figure that out. But whatever the agenda is, I'll be there and you'll be there, and we'll try to help our federal listeners. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Andrew Christian, Senior Sales Manager at AWS. Thank you.